The handcuffs clicked. That sound, sharp, metallic, final, echoed through the marble hallway of the Delmore County Courthouse like a gunshot. Every head turned. A woman in a charcoal blazer stood completely still. Her hands were now locked behind her back. Her face was calm. No tears. No protest. No begging. Just silence. Officer Dale Mercer gripped her left arm. Officer Brian Schultz grabbed her right. Together, they began marching her down the main corridor, past the security desk, past the clerk's window, past the portrait of every judge who had ever served this county hanging in gold frames on the wall. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. She didn't even look at them. A young paralegal named Tanya pressed herself against the wall to let them pass. She watched the woman's face as she walked by. Later, Tanya would tell investigators that what she saw wasn't fear. It was patience. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," Mercer barked, even though she was already moving, even though she hadn't said a single word. A courthouse security guard named Raymond stepped forward from his post near the elevator. He raised one hand. "Officers, can I ask what the charge is here?" Mercer didn't slow down. "Stand down. This doesn't concern you." Raymond watched them drag her around the corner toward the side exit. He pulled out his personal phone. He pressed record. In the lobby, a small crowd had gathered. People pulled out their phones. A mother covered her child's eyes. A defense attorney named Marcus Webb, who had been rushing toward courtroom 4 with a stack of files under his arm, stopped completely. He watched the woman's face one more time before she disappeared through the side door. He recognized something in her expression. He just couldn't place it yet. The door slammed shut behind them. Nobody in that hallway knew what had just happened. Nobody knew who she was. Nobody knew that in exactly 47 minutes, that same woman was scheduled to walk into courtroom 7, not as a defendant, but as a judge presiding over a misconduct lawsuit filed against the 2 officers who had just put her in handcuffs. Nobody knew that yet, but they were about to find out. Her name was Judge Adriana Lane Cole. She had been a judge for 11 years. Before that, she spent 9 years as a public defender, not because it paid well, because it didn't, but because she believed in a way that was almost inconvenient for someone her age, that every person who walked into a courtroom deserved to be treated like a human being. She grew up 40 minutes from this very courthouse. Her mother cleaned offices in this building for 22 years. Her father drove a school bus. They didn't have money. They had standards, and her mother's standards were ironclad. You carry yourself with dignity, no matter what the world tries to take from you. Adrian never forgot that. She graduated top of her law class, clerk for a federal judge, turned down 3 private sector offers that would have made her wealthy by 30. She chose a public defender's office instead, and she spent nearly a decade fighting for people who had no one else fighting for them. She wasn't perfect. She was demanding. She expected precision in her courtroom. She had little patience for laziness or dishonesty. Her clerks sometimes called her exacting. Attorneys who prepared thoroughly called her fair. She had never been in trouble a day in her life. This morning, she had arrived at the courthouse at 7:42 a.m. 43 minutes before the incident, she had her leather bag on her shoulder, a coffee in her hand, and a case file under her arm. The case file was the reason everything was about to explode. It was a misconduct lawsuit, a civil case brought against 2 officers from the Delmore Police Department. The plaintiff, a 41-year-old black man named Jerome Haskins, alleged that officers Mercer and Schultz had entered his property without a warrant, assaulted him, and then filed a false report claiming he had resisted arrest. Jerome's arm had been broken in 3 places. His son, who was 14 years old, had watched the entire thing from the front porch. The case had been assigned to Judge Cole 6 weeks ago. She had reviewed every document, every photograph, every deposition. She had made notes in the margins of the complaint in her careful, precise handwriting. She knew this case the way a surgeon knows an operation, completely, methodically, without sentiment. She was ready. What she was not ready for, what no one could have anticipated, was that on this morning, the morning of the first hearing, officers Mercer and Schultz would be in this building, not in the courtroom, in the hallway, and they would have no idea who she was. She was carrying her robe in the leather bag, She was in civilian clothes. She had stopped at the clerk's office on the second floor to pick up a corrected exhibit list. She was walking back toward the elevator when she rounded the corner and stepped directly into them. She saw their faces before they saw hers. And in that half second, that single breath of a moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She said nothing. She did not identify herself. She simply waited to see what they would do. They told her to stop. She stopped. They told her she matched the description. She said nothing. They told her to put her hands behind her back. She put her hands behind her back. The side exit of the Delmore County Courthouse opened onto a narrow service alley. A patrol car was parked against the curb, engine running. Mercer pushed open a heavy door with his shoulder and steered Judge Cole outside. The morning air was cold, sharp. She didn't shiver. Schultz moved around to open the back door of the patrol car. Mercer kept his hand locked around her arm. "You want to tell me your name?" he said. His tone wasn't a question. It was a test. She looked at him. "I'd like to know the reason for this detention. Suspicion of trespassing and obstruction. There was a report of an unauthorized individual in the restricted judiciary wing." She absorbed this without blinking. The restricted judiciary wing. The second floor, where the judge's chambers were located. Where her chambers were located. "I see," she said. "So, your name?" She said nothing. Mercer's jaw tightened. He exchanged a glance with Schultz over the roof of the car. Something unspoken passed between them, a kind of permission. "Put her in," Mercer said. She sat in the back seat without being forced. She crossed her ankles. She rested her cuffed hands as comfortably as she could behind her back. She looked straight ahead. Inside the courthouse, Raymond, the security guard, was already on the phone. "I need to speak with someone in courthouse administration. Right now. I just watched 2 officers arrest a woman in the main corridor. No explanation given. No badge numbers displayed. And I have it on video." The woman on the other end of the line told him to hold. He did not hold. He walked to the front lobby and found Marcus Webb, the defense attorney, still standing exactly where he'd been when the officers walked past. "You saw that?" Raymond said. Marcus nodded slowly. "I saw it. Do you know who she was?" Marcus Webb was quiet for a moment. He was a 38-year-old defense attorney who had practiced in this courthouse for 12 years. He had appeared before every judge on this floor at least once. He was good with faces. He was good with details. "Get me the docket for courtroom 7, he said quietly. Raymond looked at him. "Why?" "Because I think I know exactly who that woman is. And if I'm right," Marcus paused, "these 2 officers just made the worst mistake of their careers." Outside, in the patrol car, the situation was escalating. A second officer had arrived on scene, Sergeant Patricia Owens. She leaned into the driver's window and spoke to Mercer in a low voice. "What do we have?" "Unidentified female, found in the judiciary wing. Wouldn't give her name. Suspected trespassing." Owens peered through the back window at the woman in the seat. The woman looked back at her. Owens straightened up. "She say anything?" "Nothing useful." "She asked for a lawyer?" "Not yet." Owens pulled out her radio. Then she stopped. Something about the woman's expression made her pause. There was no panic in it. No anger. Just a quiet, focused stillness that Owens, who'd been a cop for 19 years, had only ever seen in one category of person. People who knew exactly how this was going to end. She put the radio back on her belt. "I'll run her through the system," she said. Back inside the courthouse, the news was already spreading. In the clerk's office on the second floor, a young woman named Diana had received a call from the front desk. She listened. She went pale. She hung up the phone and walked immediately to the office of the court administrator, a man named Gerald Pruitt. She knocked twice and opened the door without waiting. "Gerald, we have a problem." He looked up from his computer. "One of our judges was just taken out of this building in handcuffs by 2 Delmore PD officers." Gerald stared at her. "Which judge?" Diana's voice was steady. "Judge Cole, courtroom 7. Gerald's face went through several emotions in about 2 seconds. Then he stood up so fast his chair rolled back into the wall. "Courtroom 7. His voice was barely a whisper. "That's the Haskins case." Diana nodded. The officers in that case are Mercer and Schultz, she said. Yes. Gerald Pruitt reached for his phone with a shaking hand. But what happened next shocked everyone. Before he could dial, before anyone could make a single call, a court clerk walked in holding a single sheet of paper. It was the morning's updated sign-in log. At 7:42 a.m., Judge Adrienne Cole had signed into the courthouse. Her signature was at the top of the page. She had been in the building the entire time. Marcus Webb moved fast. He crossed the lobby, took the stairs to the second floor two at a time, and pushed through the glass doors into the clerk's wing. The hallway was already buzzing. People talking in low, urgent voices, doors opening and closing, someone on a phone in the corner gesturing wildly. He found Diane at the front desk and put both hands flat on the counter. The docket for courtroom 7 this morning. I need to see it. She printed it before he finished the sentence and slid it across the counter. He scanned it. Haskins versus Delmore County Police Department. Civil misconduct. Presiding, the Honorable Adrienne E. Cole. Scheduled time of hearing, 9:15 a.m. He looked at his watch. 8:28 a.m. The hearing was in 47 minutes, and the presiding judge was sitting in the back of a patrol car in the service alley. He pulled out his phone and started typing. Marcus was not just any defense attorney. He had spent the last 4 years documenting what he called a pattern, a quiet, persistent, almost invisible pattern of officers within the Delmore PD using procedural interference to delay or disrupt civil misconduct cases. Nothing provable yet. Nothing that would hold up in court. But he had a folder on his laptop labeled Simply Coincidences that was now 41 pages long. Judges getting paperwork mysteriously delayed. Witnesses being pulled over on the morning of testimony. Evidence requests that vanished in bureaucratic loops. He had never had anything like this. He had never had the judge herself removed from the building in handcuffs. He typed a text to his investigator, a woman named Carla Reyes, and sent it. Carla, I need you at the Delmore courthouse. Right now. Bring your camera and your recorder. Do not ask questions yet. Just come. Then he walked back downstairs and stepped outside. The patrol car was still in the alley. He could see her through the back window. Sitting. Still. Patient. He walked toward the car. Mercer stepped out immediately. Sir, back up. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm an attorney licensed to practice in this state. I'd like to speak with the individual in your vehicle. She hasn't asked for an attorney. Has she been formally arrested and charged? Mercer hesitated. She's being detained for questioning. Then, under the laws of the state, she has a right to speak with legal counsel during any detention exceeding 15 minutes. How long has she been in that vehicle? Mercer said nothing. Marcus looked past him through the car window. The woman met his eyes. She gave the smallest possible nod. Officer, Marcus said quietly, I need you to understand something. I know who that woman is. I'm not sure you do. And if you do not allow me to speak with her in the next 60 seconds, what happens after that is going to follow you for the rest of your career? Mercer's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's a description of what's about to happen. There was a long silence. Then from inside the car, for the first time since the handcuffs had clicked, the woman spoke. Her voice was clear, calm, unhurried. Officer Mercer, she said, before you make any further decisions, I'd suggest you call your supervising lieutenant. Tell him where you are. Tell him who you're detained. And tell him the name of the case scheduled in courtroom 7 this morning. She let that sit in the air for a moment. Then we can talk about what happens next. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. Even the traffic on the street outside the alley seemed to go quiet. And then the situation got worse. Mercer pulled out his radio. He stepped away from the car and turned his back to Marcus. His voice was low, but Marcus caught pieces of it. Situation at the courthouse. Uncooperative subject. Possible lawyer interference. Schultz stood with his arms folded, watching Marcus like he was a problem here. You need to step back, counselor. Marcus didn't move. I'm on a public thoroughfare. You're interfering with a police matter. Talking isn't interference. That's also the law. Schultz stepped closer. The kind of step that's meant to make someone flinch. Marcus has spent 12 years in courtrooms dealing with men who tried to intimidate people for a living. He did not flinch. Inside the courthouse, Gerald Pruitt had finally gotten through to someone. He was on the phone with Deputy Chief Leonard Holt, a man who had been with the Delmore PD for 26 years and who had, in Gerald's experience, always been reasonable. "Leonard, I need this resolved in the next 30 minutes. Judge Cole was detained by 2 of your officers in this building. She is currently in a patrol vehicle outside. She is scheduled to preside over a case in 44 minutes. I need her released immediately." There was a pause on the other end. "Gerald, I'm hearing something different from my officers. They say they had a report of an unauthorized individual in a restricted area." The woman refused to identify herself. "She didn't need to identify herself, Leonard. She was in a building she has access to. She signed in at 7:42 this morning. We have the log." Another pause. "Send me the log." "I'm sending it now. But I need your officers to release her before this goes any further. Because if that hearing doesn't start on time, the plaintiff's attorneys are going to file for sanctions before noon, and this is going to become a very public, very ugly situation." What Gerald did not know, what no one in administration knew yet, was that Deputy Chief Holt had received a different phone call 11 minutes ago. That call had come from a man named Thomas Garrett. Thomas Garrett was not a police officer. He was the lead attorney representing the Delmore County Police Department in the Haskins case. He was a man whose entire defense strategy depended on how this first hearing went. He was a man who had, over the course of his career, developed what he called relationships with certain figures in the department. What he had said to Holt in that phone call was not recorded. What it produced, however, was about to become the central evidence in everything that followed. Marcus Webb heard the patrol car door open behind him. He turned. Mercer was pulling Judge Cole out of the back seat. For one moment, Marcus thought it was over. He thought they were releasing her. Then he saw the second patrol car pulling into the alley, and the officer stepping out of it was not there to help her. He was carrying a second set of paperwork. "We're transporting her to the District Processing Center," Mercer announced. "Formal obstruction charge." Marcus went very still. That charge will not survive the first 5 minutes of a bail hearing. That's for the court to decide. "The court," Marcus said slowly, "is the woman you are currently arresting." Mercer's expression didn't change. "She's a private citizen until she can prove otherwise. She won't identify herself. She won't produce credentials. Under department protocol, she doesn't have to produce credentials to avoid arrest for trespassing in a building she is legally authorized to enter." But Mercer was no longer listening. He was following instructions. That was the thing Marcus would tell investigators later. The thing that chilled him more than anything else. Mercer wasn't acting out of ignorance anymore. He had received his radio call. He had spoken to someone. And then, knowing more than he had known 5 minutes ago, he had made a choice. He chose to continue. The second patrol car pulled forward. Mercer guided Judge Cole toward it. She looked at Marcus as she passed. She still hadn't shown fear, but something in her eyes had shifted. Not doubt, not worry. Something closer to resolve. Like a door closing quietly on everything that was about to happen to these men. Nobody expected what happened next. Carla Reyes arrived at 8:41 a.m. She was 44 years old, 5 feet tall, and carried a messenger bag that contained 2 cameras, a digital recorder, a portable hard drive, and a personal notebook she had been filling since 2019. The notebook was full of names, dates, badge numbers, and case reference codes. She had been investigating the Delmore PD for 3 years, not as a journalist, as a private investigator. And her client, the person who had been paying her quietly, methodically for 36 months, was a retired detective named Howard Gale. Howard had been forced out of the department in 2021 after he filed an internal complaint about evidence tampering in the Haskins arrest. His complaint was dismissed. His personnel file was reviewed, and suddenly errors were discovered in his record. He was pressured into early retirement with a reduced pension. He had been building a case ever since. Carla walked past the front entrance of the courthouse and into the service alley. She saw the patrol cars. She saw Marcus. She raised her camera without breaking stride. "Don't," an officer said. "Public alley," she said. "Public space. First Amendment." She kept shooting. She caught Judge Cole's face in profile as she was guided toward the second vehicle. She caught Mercer's hand on the judge's arm. She caught Schultz standing with his back to the building, arms crossed, watching. Then she pulled out her phone and called Howard Gale. He picked up on the first ring. "Tell me," he said. "It's happening," she said. "Right now, Mercer and Schultz. They've got her. She's being transported." A sharp intake of breath. "Does she have any idea what's in the file?" "She doesn't need to know what's in the file. Howard. She's the one presiding. If they move her before that hearing starts." "I know." The case gets delayed, rescheduled, and in the meantime, "I know. They've done this before, Carla, with the witness in 2022, with the clerk in the Morrison case. They don't break things openly. They just delay them until the will to fight runs out." Carla watched the second patrol car, preparing to leave. "Not today," she said. She ended the call. She turned to Marcus. She handed him a USB drive. He looked at it. "What's on this?" 41 incidents, she said. Dates, times, names, badge numbers, and in 9 of those incidents, recorded audio. Marcus stared at her. "My name is Carla Reyes. I've been building this case for 3 years. And the woman they just put in that car?" She nodded toward the departing vehicle. "That case she's assigned to? It's not just a civil misconduct suit. It's a thread that unravels everything." Marcus looked down at the drive in his hand. "How do I know this is real?" "Because 2 years ago, I tried to bring this to the Delmore DA's office," she said. "And 6 days later, my car was broken into and my laptop was stolen." She paused. "I'd already made copies. But whoever sent that message knew where I lived." Marcus put the drive in his pocket. He looked back at the alley. The second patrol car was gone. Judge Cole was gone. The critical lead had just arrived in his hand. Now, he had to move faster than the people trying to bury it. Marcus went back inside the courthouse at a near run. He had 31 minutes until the scheduled start of the Haskins hearing. He needed 3 things: a computer, a phone, and someone with the authority to halt this before it got any worse. He found Diana in the clerk's office. "I need a room with a computer and a private phone line." She gave him conference room B without asking why. He plugged the USB drive in. The files loaded in seconds. 41 incident reports, each one a careful, methodical document. Date, location, involved officers, case number, outcome. The first 9 had audio files attached. He clicked the first one. A man's voice, low, careful, speaking to what sounded like another officer. "The problem is the witness. If she testifies Thursday, the civil case moves forward. If she can't make it Thursday." "What do you mean can't make it?" "I mean if she got pulled over Tuesday morning for expired registration. If her car happened to be impounded. If she spent 2 days dealing with that." A long pause. "That's thin." "It doesn't need to be thick. It just needs to buy time." Marcus stopped the recording. He had chills. He moved to the 9th file, the most recent one, dated 4 months ago. Different voices this time. One of them he recognized almost immediately. Thomas Garrett, the defense attorney for the department in the Haskins case. He was speaking to someone whose voice Marcus didn't recognize. The audio was lower quality, wind noise in the background, like it was recorded outdoors. If this hearing goes forward, the discovery process opens everything. You understand that? Everything. "We know." "Then make sure it doesn't go forward." "I don't care how." "How much latitude do we have?" A pause. "Enough." Marcus sat back. He looked at the time. 8:57 a.m. He had 18 minutes. He plugged his own recorder into computer and copied every file onto it. Then he took the USB drive out, put it back in his pocket, and picked up the conference room phone. He called the office of the presiding judge of the Delmore County District Court, the judge who supervised all judicial assignments in this courthouse. Her name was Judge Marilyn Okafor. She was 70 years old, had been on the bench for 31 years, and was widely regarded as the most dangerous human being in any room she entered. She picked up personally. "Okafor, Judge, this is Marcus Webb. I'm a defense attorney currently in your courthouse. I need 60 seconds of your time, and then I need you to make 2 phone calls. She gave him 90 seconds. When he finished, there was a silence that felt like a held breath. You have this on recording? Yes. Where's Judge Cole right now? En route to district processing. Another silence. Stay where you are, she said. He stayed. At 9:04 a.m., Carla was in the lobby, photographing the sign-in log to the clerk's window when a young paralegal, Tanya, appeared beside her. I need to tell you something, Tanya said. Carla turned. I saw her this morning. Before all this, I was coming out of the stairwell, and she was walking toward the elevator. And one of those officers, the taller one, he was already on the 2nd floor. He saw her, and he made a phone call. Before he stopped her, he made a call first. Carla's hand tightened around her recorder. Will you say that on record? Tanya hesitated. I could lose my job. You could also be a witness in a federal investigation. A long pause. Tanya looked down at her hands. Then she looked back up. Yes, she said. I'll say it on record. Carla clicked record. And at that exact moment, 9:07 a.m., Marcus Webb's phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Check the parking garage security footage from 7:38 a.m. Camera 4. You'll see who made the call before the arrest. And you'll see who he called. Marcus stared at the text. A breakthrough, but before he could act on it, his phone rang. It was Carla. Her voice was tight. Marcus, they just filed the obstruction charge. It's official. She's in the system. The breakthrough had just created a bigger problem. Judge Marilyn Okafor did not make 2 phone calls. She made 5. The first was to the Delmore County Sheriff, who outranked every officer involved in this situation. The second was to the DA's office. The third was to the court system's in-house counsel. The fourth was to the mayor's chief of staff. The fifth was to a federal contact whose name she did not share with anyone. By 9:19 a.m., for minutes after the Haskins hearing was supposed to begin, the processing of Judge Cole had been halted. At 9:23 a.m., she was released from the holding area at the District Processing Center. At 9:31 a.m., she walked back to the main entrance of the Delmore County Courthouse, still in the charcoal blazer, still carrying her leather bag, still completely calm. The lobby went silent. People stared. Raymond, the security guard, who was still at his post, who had not left his post, who still had the video on his phone, let out a long, slow exhale. Tanya, coming down the stairwell with Carla, stopped on the last step and pressed both hands over her mouth. Marcus met her at the door. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, at the slight redness around her wrist where the handcuffs had been, at the calm in her face that had somehow survived 2 hours of this. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. You held on, he finally said. I always do, she said. She walked past him toward the elevator. The small crowd in the lobby parted for her. She pressed a button. The doors opened. She stepped inside. Marcus watched the doors close. He allowed himself one moment of something close to relief. The hearing would be rescheduled. The judge was safe. The recordings were secured. The witness had agreed to speak. The footage was waiting in the parking garage. It felt, for that moment, like the beginning of the end for Mercer, Schultz, and everyone above them who had made this morning possible. It felt like victory. It was not victory. At 9:44 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. It was Howard Gale. His voice was different now. Something had broken through the controlled exterior he always maintained. Marcus, the USB drive. I have it. The original drive, the one Carla gave you, where is it? Marcus reached into his pocket. His hand found nothing. He checked the other pocket. He checked his jacket, his bag. He went cold. Marcus. Howard's voice was quiet. Someone bumped into you in the hallway about 20 minutes ago, just before you went back into the conference room. Do you remember that? He did remember. A man in a gray jacket, moving quickly. He hadn't thought anything of it. The drive is gone, Marcus said. The drive is gone, Howard confirmed. And 30 seconds ago, I got an anonymous message. It said, the copies don't exist. The witness doesn't remember. And the judge's conduct this morning is already being framed as a public disruption. Marcus stood very still in the middle of the courthouse lobby. People moved around him. The relief was gone. The ground had shifted. Then the situation got worse. By noon, it was on the news. Not the truth. Not what Raymond had seen, or what Tanya had witnessed, or what was on Carla's recordings. Not the voice of Thomas Garrett on an audio file, saying make sure it doesn't go forward. What was on the news was something else entirely. Local woman calls the scene at Delmore Courthouse, refuses to identify herself to officers. The cheer-in scroll beneath a blurry still image, taken from an angle that made the arrest look almost routine. The woman's face was not visible. The handcuffs were not visible. What was visible was a woman appearing to be led calmly by two uniformed officers who were simply doing their jobs. A spokesperson for the Delmore PD had released a statement at 11:15 a.m. This morning, officers responded to a report of an unauthorized individual in a restricted area of the county courthouse. The individual declined to identify herself despite multiple requests, which required officers to temporarily detain her for questioning. The individual was released after her identity was confirmed. Officers acted in full accordance with departmental protocol throughout the incident. No names were mentioned. No context was given. No mention of which courtroom. No mention of which case. Someone had been very careful about what they released and what they didn't. The framing worked. Within 2 hours, the comment sections were filled with people debating whether she should have just shown her ID. Radio hosts were asking why she'd made it complicated. A legal commentator appeared on a regional cable program and said, with complete confidence, that from a strictly procedural standpoint, officers had followed protocol. At 12:47 p.m., Gerald Pruitt called Marcus from his office. His voice was tired and careful. Marcus, I need you to understand the position the court administration is in here. We have confirmed that Judge Cole was wrongly detained. We have confirmed that, but the county legal office has advised us to handle this quietly. A press release, an internal review, a formal apology. In exchange for what? Marcus said. In exchange for the judge agreeing not to pursue further action, and for the Haskins case to be reassigned to a different judge. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. They want to remove her from the case. They want to avoid a conflict of interest claim. They're saying, and I'm not saying I agree with this, they're saying that after this morning, her ability to be impartial was not compromised by being falsely arrested, Gerald. Her safety was compromised. Her dignity was compromised. Her legal rights were compromised. I understand that. Do you? Because what you're describing is a deal that lets the people who did this walk away, removes the one judge who has already reviewed every document in this case, and leaves Jerome Haskins with nothing. A long pause. I'm just conveying what's been proposed. Tell them no, Marcus said. He hung up. At 1:15 p.m., he went to find Judge Cole. She was in her chambers on the second floor. The room was quiet. The leather bag was on the desk. The robe was hanging on the hook behind the door, exactly where it belonged. She was reading a document. She looked up when he entered. He sat down across from her and laid out everything. The missing drive, the news coverage, the offer from administration, the call from Garrett's voice on the recording. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set the document down. They want me to step away, she said. They're pushing for it. She was quiet for a moment. Her eyes moved to the window. Outside, the courthouse steps were visible, the wide stone steps where people came every day to fight for what they were owed. Jerome Haskins' son was 14 years old when he watched those officers break his father's arm, she said quietly. He's 16 now. He's been waiting 2 years for this case to come to trial. She paused. I'm not stepping away. Marcus looked at her, hope rising, but underneath it, the weight of what they'd lost, the drive, the narrative, the momentum. And then the hope cracked. Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from Carla. They got a Tanya. She's recanting. Says she doesn't remember seeing anything. Hope disappeared. The emotional low point had arrived. And it had arrived quietly, the way the worst things always do. At 2:03 p.m., Raymond knocked on the door of Judge Cole's chambers. He was still in a security guard uniform. He was holding his personal phone in both hands like it was something fragile, something important. Marcus opened the door. Raymond looked past him at the judge. "I need to show you something," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I didn't know if it was my place." He held up his phone. On the screen was the video he had recorded in the main corridor. 8:06 a.m. The moment the handcuffs clicked. Shot from 30 feet away. Slightly angled, but clear. Completely clear. You could see Judge Cole's face. You could see Mercer's hand around her arm. You could see the people in the hallway stopping to watch. And you could see, in the background, almost at the edge of the frame, a man in a gray jacket standing near the clerk's window, watching, and holding a phone to his ear. Marcus leaned in. "Carla," he said immediately. "I need Carla." Raymond handed him the phone. But that wasn't all. Because Raymond, who had been a security guard in this courthouse for 11 years, had done something else this morning that no one had asked him to do. When he walked back to his post after recording the video, he had passed the parking garage entrance. He had remembered, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, that the security desk had remote access to garage cameras. He had gone back to his desk. He had pulled up camera 4. The timestamp, 7:38 a.m. The frame, a gray sedan in parking spot 4C. A man in a gray jacket standing beside it. Phone pressed his ear. The man had his back to the camera, almost, but there was a reflection in the side mirror of the sedan. A partial reflection of a face. It was enough. Raymond had saved both videos to his personal cloud account before his shift ended. He handed Marcus a piece of paper with the login credentials. "I didn't delete anything," Raymond said quietly. "I know how these things go. I grew up in this county." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "You may have just changed everything," he said. Raymond shrugged. "I just press record." Carla arrived at the courthouse at 2:31 p.m. She took Raymond's footage and ran the face in the side mirror reflection through every database she had access to. It took 11 minutes. The match came back. The man in the gray jacket. The man who had been standing at the clerk's window watching the arrest. The man who had bumped into Marcus and lifted the USB drive. The man who had been on the phone in the parking garage at 7:38 a.m., 12 minutes before the arrest, was a private security consultant named Derek Prynne. Derek Prynne had one notable prior employer, the Garrett and Associates law firm, Thomas Garrett's firm. Carla looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Judge Cole. Judge Cole picked up a pen and wrote 3 words on notepad. She turned it so they could read it. "File it now." The momentum had shifted. The hidden proof had arrived. And somewhere across the city, in an office on the 14th floor of a glass building, Thomas Garrett's phone began to ring. By 3 p.m., 3 things were happening at once. Marcus Webb was in federal district court filing an emergency motion for judicial interference, supported by Raymond's video, Carla's recording, the parking garage footage, and a 14-page declaration he had dictated while Carla drove. Howard Gale was on the phone with a federal investigator he had been building a relationship with for 2 years, a woman named Agent Patricia Sims, reading her the case number, the names, and the dates. And Judge Marilyn Okafor was walking into a meeting she had called with the Delmore County Bar Association, the DA's office, and 2 representatives from the State Judicial Oversight Board. She had the complete timeline on a printed document. She placed it on the table without a word and sat down. The room read it in silence. At 3:47 p.m., Thomas Garrett's office received formal notice of the federal emergency motion. His assistant walked into his office and placed the document on his desk. He read the first paragraph. Then he read it again. He picked up his phone and called Deputy Chief Holt. Holt didn't answer. He called Mercer. Mercer didn't answer. He called the one person who had always answered, the senior partner at his firm, a man named William Cross, who had been practicing law in the state for 40 years and who had navigated situations like this before. Cross answered on the second ring. "I know," Cross said. "I've already seen it. We need to—" "Thomas." Cross's voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it, something Garrett had never heard before. "We need to do nothing, because anything we do right now becomes part of the record." A long silence. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Cross said slowly, "that you should call your personal attorney. not the firm. Your personal attorney. Tonight, Garrett sat very still. Outside his window, the city moved in its ordinary way. Cars, people, the ordinary machinery of a Thursday afternoon. None of it felt ordinary. He set the phone down. At 4:15 p.m., the State Judicial Oversight Board issued an emergency statement. It was 3 sentences long. The board has been made aware of a serious incident involving the unlawful detention of a sitting judge of the Delmore County District Court. A formal investigation has been opened. Officers Dale Mercer and Brian Schultz are placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. The statement went live on the board's public website at 4:17 p.m. By 4:25 p.m., it was on every major news outlet in the state. By 4:40 p.m., it was national. The real story came out fast after that. Raymond video was shared by the Judicial Oversight Board as part of their public statement. 60 seconds of footage that showed, clearly, undeniably, a sitting judge being handcuffed in a courthouse hallway while officers refused to allow her to speak with legal counsel. The Delmore PD's public affairs statement from that morning. Officers acted in full accordance with departmental protocol, was immediately compared side by side with the video. The contrast was damaging in a way that no press strategy could repair. Social media did the rest. By 8 p.m., the video had been viewed 14 million times. At 9 p.m., Judge Cole gave a single public statement. She stood at the front steps of the courthouse, the wide stone steps, with no prepared remarks, no podium, no handlers. She spoke for 3 minutes. This morning I was placed in handcuffs in a building I have worked in for 11 years, in a hallway where my mother used to clean the floors. I chose not to identify myself. That was a deliberate decision. I wanted every person present to make their own choices based on what they observed, not based on who I was. I wanted the actions to speak before the titles did. She paused. Jerome Haskins did not have the option to say a title and make it stop. He was in his own front yard. His son watched from the porch. And the men who put me in handcuffs this morning are the same men Jerome Haskins is asking this court to hold accountable. She looked directly at the cameras. I want you to think about that. She stepped back from the microphone. She did not take questions. She walked back inside. The next morning, Thomas Garrett's personal attorney called the federal investigator's office and requested a meeting. 3 days later, Derek Prynne, the man in the gray jacket, accepted a cooperation agreement. 7 days later, internal communications from the Delmore PD were subpoenaed as part of the federal investigation. 11 days later, Mercer and Schultz were formally charged, not just with the incident involving Judge Cole, but with the original misconduct in Haskins' case, where new forensic evidence confirmed that the initial arrest report had been falsified. The case did not get a new judge. Judge Adrian Cole remained on the Haskins case. The hearing was rescheduled. She presided. 6 months later, Jerome Haskins stood in the parking lot of the courthouse. He was wearing a good coat. His son Elijah was beside him, 16 years old now, 3 inches taller than his father, watching the courthouse doors with an expression that was difficult to read. Something between wariness and wonder. The verdict had come in 40 minutes ago. The jury had found in Jerome's favor. Full damages. The court had also ordered a systemic review of misconduct complaint procedures across the entire Delmore PD. Jerome's attorney, not Marcus, but a civil rights firm that Marcus had connected them with, was speaking to reporters on the steps. Jerome wasn't listening to the words. He was thinking about his front yard, the way the morning had looked, the way his arm had sounded. He turned to his son. "You okay?" he said. Elijah looked at him. "Yeah," he said. He paused. "Are you?" Jerome thought about it, really thought about it. "Getting there," he said. Officer Mercer was convicted on 3 federal counts. Schultz accepted a plea deal. Derek Prynne's cooperation led to the indictment of 2 senior figures within the department and an ongoing investigation into the Garrett and Associates firm. Thomas Garrett resigned from the bar pending the outcome of the investigation. Howard Gale's pension was restored. With back pay, Tanya, the paralegal who had briefly recanted, eventually gave a full statement. She was not fired. The court administrator went to bat for her. Raymond, the security guard, received a commendation from the State Judicial Oversight Board. He kept it on his desk. He was slightly embarrassed by it, which was the right reaction. Carla Reyes finished the story she had been building for 3 years. It ran in a national publication. It was 41 pages long, and Judge Adrian Cole walked into her courtroom the following Monday morning, the same way she walked in every Monday. She sat down. She looked at the room. She said, as she always did, "Court is in session." Her mother had cleaned these floors for 22 years. She had always known this courtroom belonged to her too.